you're not thinking outside the box in that way, right? Like just because you might not have a physical product to give away doesn't mean you can't find a creative way to get hands-on with whatever you're doing.
Welcome to Top 3 Thursday, your essential guide to keeping up to date in a world brimming with endless events and innovations. Top 3 Thursday is more than just a podcast. It's your personal informant in an ever-changing world of events. So tune in and don't just keep up, stay ahead of the curve.
And there she is, the amazing Samantha Vogel. Samantha, thank you so much for being on Top 3 Thursday podcast. Like I referenced on our intro, it is one of the most stressful jobs being in this industry, being an event producer. And I'm going to put another layer on it, because in the trade show industry, and Freeman does a lot more than that, obviously, in terms of what Samantha's world, but specifically our topic today is going to be diving a little bit into the trade show world. That's high pressure, right? Making sure that in a short period of load-in time that it's exactly branded specifically how clients want it. They want their ROI. They want to make sure that they're getting their biggest bang for the buck. But first of all, before we get into that, Samantha, first of all, thank you so much for being on. You're in Dallas, Texas right now, correct?
Correct.
And how's the weather in Dallas right now? Are we hitting hundreds yet? What are we, beginning of May? So are we hitting the hundreds yet, or not quite yet?
Not yet, very soon. I think yesterday was like 91, which is perfect for me. I'm a total summer girl. But April and May are quite rainy here, rainy and hot. But yeah, we'll be in the hundreds soon enough, happily for me. Very good, very good. Okay, well, I don't envy you. I'm kind of a cold weather dude, but much love to everyone in Dallas. Let's make that happen. Those 100-degree temperatures. Let's go. All right. So first of all, before we go into our topic as well, as I referenced at the beginning of the podcast, Samantha, wide variety and array of opportunities in her past, but what kind of plays close to my heart is the special needs world she's been in with Special Olympics as well as March of Dimes as well. And you have some family background as well. What is the passion behind that? And maybe you could even let us know, do you still take that passion and put it in your world today? Yes, absolutely. I mean, that period of time where I worked in the nonprofit segment, doing events and raising sponsorship dollars from, everywhere from family companies, that raise their own money through the people that they know and love, to CFOs and CEOs who got their employee base involved. I think the biggest thing for me and the passion behind that was I was able to combine my love for people and my love for events. And at the end of the day, I think what resonates with me even today is the stories that I took away from those events remind me every day that the reason we create opportunities for people to come together is to create that connection and to make that story, right? Like, what we do as event planners is design opportunities for stories to come to life through connection. And even to this day, when I tell some of my stories from back then when I was working in the nonprofit for special needs areas, I mean, people will literally cry. Like my dad is a 200-pound, 6-foot cowboy, and I don't ever see him cry. And back in those days when I would tell him some of the stories that just truly touched me, and just got in there in my heart, he would see a little tear roll down his face. So really special time, but one that really impacts the way I think about events today in terms of creating opportunities to bring people together around issues or things or products, whatever it is that they're passionate about.
I love that. The stories behind, and that's what the event industry is, right? I mean, yeah, there's logistics and all the above, but a successful producer, a successful designer is telling a story, right? And obviously you have a wide array of experience like I referenced, but the beautiful thing about Samantha is that as we're talking about the trade show industry, not only is she currently, selling the vision, selling the story, as she referenced, but she also has, in her world at GameStop, also was a producer on that side as well. So she was representing the brand, and not to say that she doesn't represent the brand every single day when she's selling her great services at Freeman, but so she's seen both sides of the fence, and it's such a great perspective for us to talk about today. So well, first of all, tell us a little bit about that journey doing from GameStop opportunity and where you are now in terms of selling a vision to your brands versus you actually being the brand.
Yeah, sure. So, well, my time with GameStop was amazing, really special. I was there for almost 9 years. And at GameStop, my team produced all of our corporate events. But as part of that, our largest conference for all of our GameStop store managers in the US basically was a citywide event with over 5,000 GameStop employees. We had a 250,000 square foot trade show, and we opened that trade show up to the public. So at the largest, we had about 15,000 people coming through that floor. We had brands from Sony to Microsoft to Square Enix to even small mom and pop toy vendors. And so back over those 9 years, my role was really creating an incredibly immersive trade show floor for people to experience the latest and greatest in the gaming industry. And I loved it because being able to partner with brands that are really innovative, willing to push the boundaries, think outside the box, but also being able to connect with brands in terms of what matters most to them and what they consider success on a show floor, and tailoring that approach to each brand on the show floor to make sure that everybody feels like they are really getting a good, not only ROI, but ROE out of the experience. And then, of course, to ensure that our attendees are having, a very immersive, hands-on, engaging time at the trade show. It was a lot of learning for me, but also so much fun. And I think some of my favorite event memories are seeing people lined up before we open those doors to the trade show floor, like 6,000 people deep, like chanting, counting down. We open the doors and they like run in. So really exciting. Transitioning over to Freeman's obviously was definitely a change for me because I was going from producing a massive trade show floor and scaling that back to producing a trade show booth. But it was great in that I had so much experience in terms of looking at, back end production, labor, rigging, understanding how attendees move through a show floor and what captures their attention, ensuring that we have a lot of hands-on experiences, that it's a customized experience in our booth. So, I think it's been a transition that I'm really excited about. And I love having the opportunity to kind of sit on both sides of the trade show floor, so to speak.
Talk about stress. I mean, the being representing all those brands, especially on the GameStop side, where especially you have people chanting, ready to see this amazing activation that has been produced. The amount of stress to make sure that you're delivering every single time based on the amount of money that's been invested to make that happen must have been crazy for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that trade show floor had millions and millions of dollars invested into it. And I think, one of the biggest takeaways for me in terms of thinking about that ROI and how much money you've invested into the experience is really understanding the demographics of the audience, right? Like a huge trade show floor that you're going to produce for demographics of gamers is very different from a trade show floor that you're going to produce if your demographic is, dentists. And so really understanding the impact of your demographics, what it is they're looking for, what they want from the trade show floor, and then relaying that to your exhibitors and your sponsors, and what is it that they also want from your demographic attendees, and what do they consider a good investment for their time and dollar on your show floor. Really makes a difference, but it is definitely a lot of things to think through, a lot of pre-planning. But at the end of the day, when you do it right and it comes to life, it's also incredibly impactful. So yeah, very exciting. I absolutely love trade shows, and I'm one of those people that like geeks out in the back end. I love going into the boneyard. I love looking at docks at convention centers. Like, oh, this is a great dock. This will be easy to move in, or being like, oh, this is going to be a real challenge. So I mean, it's just so much fun seeing a show build up and move in and come to life after months of planning.
And the fact that you do that, and also you look so stress free, right? I mean, based on that, I'm not saying that the actual number, but the amount of stress your body has to feel like it's probably 65, 70 years of age, but what you're probably what, early 20s, whatever you are, you're drinking some Kool-Aid that's making sense right now, so I love it.
Well, Chris, I'm gonna have to pay you after the podcast for saying I'm in my early 20s, but I'll take it.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so we're going to get into our topic of the day, and we have a lot of planners that are listening about, and they have trade shows that they need to produce. They need to represent their brand. They need to engage in a new product they're launching, all the things. And what an amazing opportunity for Freeman to land someone like you who had that vast experience and the strategic way that you have gone about thinking of how to create an experience, create a story that we referenced earlier. So kudos to Freeman for landing a badass like yourself. So knowing that, like I said, clients are looking for those opportunities to stand out in a crowd, create that influence, and that's what your specialty is now in terms of selling the vision on behalf of Freeman, right? So the question of the day is this: the top 3 future-facing opportunities that planners need to invest and research. Probably just talk to you, Samantha, about how to stand out in a crowd on a trade show floor. We're going to start with number 3, Samantha, if you got it. Number 3, hit me.
Okay, so I think number 3 is really thinking about your long-term exhibiting strategy. When you're looking at your booth build, especially if you're showing up at different show floors throughout the year where your attendees might be coming, they're going to see your booth every time, right? So really understanding, first of all, who are the attendees you're seeing? What shows are they at? Are people seeing you more than once a year? And what does your booth look like? Because you don't want your attendees to see the same booth and feel like they're going to get the exact same experience if they see you multiple times a year. So we all know budget is a thing, and we can talk about that later. But when you're really thinking about your annual exhibiting strategy, I think it's really important to understand, how can we create a booth that's within our budget, that doesn't require a new build every time, but gives us the flexibility to create a different look at each and every show. That's one thing Freeman's actually really great at, because we do have a lot of modular components. So for one of the booths we custom designed recently, we looked at it from a holistic perspective. We knew exactly what we wanted, but we knew we wanted to be able to change the look and feel of it, change the components, change the seating, change whether a wall is closed or not closed. And we wanted to be able to do that really easily and without creating a lot of additional graphics, rebuilding a back wall, etc. So we talked about all those things in the design process. And now we have a booth where we can show up with that booth in a full build. We can full build it in a different way at the next show. We can do a half build of it and just use smaller components and make it look like a completely different experience every time. So I think that's really one way to stand out if your attendees are seeing you at multiple shows, is really thinking about the way your brand and your booth looks at each show and how you can do that without reinventing the wheel every time.
So it's almost like it's a business, obviously, and the trade show floor is a business. They're there to generate, hopefully, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, whatever that amount is, and wherever they go, they still have to represent that brand, but they want to be different. They want to be unique. They want to live in that blue ocean and not live in that red ocean. And by using someone like yourself and thinking about the strategic way of redesigning every single time you're out the door is so smart. So based on that, on the ROI you referenced, it's not an expensive endeavor to kind of recreate or repurpose the feel. To stand out and the adaptability to be able to pull that off, are we talking about 20%, 30% increment expenses based on adaptability, or can it be done in one big nut based on how many shows you're doing?
It can be done in one big nut, right? So when you're building, if you're allocating the funds to rebuild your booth, and whether that's going to CapEx or coming out of your annual, budget, if you're looking at that strategically, knowing, okay, well, I'm building this new exhibit booth and I know I'm going to show up at 15 different trade shows in the next 12 months. 30% of the attendees are going to be at multiple events. I know that if they show up to an event and they see the same booth, exactly the same, and it has the same experience, they might be tempted to walk by if they've already participated in that booth previously at another show. So in order to do that from stage one, I'm going to build my booth with these custom pieces. And that way, when they show up at the second booth, if I've adjusted that booth a little bit, I'm not really adding any incremental cost because I created it modularly from the beginning, right? Now, every now and then, Chris, will you have to reprint a graphic? Absolutely. But you're talking a couple $1,000s as opposed to a new build booth each time, which could be upwards of six figures, right? So I think that's the thing, is like we create a brand voice in this modular booth, but we're able to redesign it each time without the stress, the time, the labor, the logistics of having to start from scratch on a new look each time.
Perfect. So the bottom line is that if you have a multi-city opportunity, you're not going to have to repurpose or recreate a booth every single time out. You can work with an amazing designer like Samantha. She's going to create an all-purpose encompassing brand that can go to countless different destinations and not only create a great ROI for you, but also lend to the destination they're in, right? Which is why you're so good, Samantha. That's why you're good, right?
You're going to work with one of our graphic or environmental designers. I won't be able to design it for you. I can just think outside the box. I can concept, but we have amazing graphic designers. And whoever your
Just stop,
PSC
Samantha.
is.
You're the face. You're the face. You're the face of the account. So they're working with you. You're making them. You're pulling the strings. So take the credit where the credit's due, girlfriend. You got it. Number two way to create a future-facing opportunity on the trade show, to stand out, create that influence. Samantha, give it to me.
Yeah, listen, I think that it's technology, right? I think this is never going to be something that goes away. We are always going to, events in general, I think is on the forefront of innovation, right? Whatever industry you're presenting in, you're probably talking about something that's future facing already, right? A new product, a new demo, a new technology yourself that you might be selling to the medical world or the gaming world, who knows? But I think finding a way to integrate that technology into your booth is vital, and to do it in a way that's really immersive, maybe different. So, some things that people do is get really creative with AV, right? We've produced experiences where people might walk by the back wall of a booth and it's an interactive motion graphic where they're seeing themselves walking by, right? And then the next person can come up and do a dance, move, and they see themselves on the screen echoed in that. It could be something much simpler, right? Like an interactive technology piece that's in your booth where people can go up and interact on a touch screen or something without having an attendee available to talk to them. It could be a new LED screen that's coming out. We're seeing amazing things happen in the AV world where you have really slim, 1.5 millimeter LED panels that you can put as flooring and you can put a car on it, right? That's amazing. You're walking into a booth where the experience is almost then coming from the ground up. So I think just being forward facing means looking at what's out there in the market, what's within your budget, and fun and creative ways to include that technology into your booth experience.
So I tell this to my employees as well as anyone I ever talk to, including on this podcast, that right now every company is a tech company, right? Our services are events, right? But at the end of the day, we're still a tech company. And if you are not embracing what tech looks like, especially, say it again, the AI world, I'll say this really quick, in the next, we're going to see more advancement in the next 5 years based on what AI is creating than we've seen in the last 100 years, based on what's happening. So, since you brought up technology really quick, I do want to talk about, is there integration on the AI front Freeman is providing that you're pitching to your clients? AI is cost effective. People are scared of it, but it is cost effective. So that could be from, capturing attendees, information. That's what we want. We want the follow up, obviously. So, how are you incorporating AI as part of the technology vibe in the trade show world?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, you're 100% right on. Like, AI is definitely changing the face of all industries, including events, and it's changing very quickly. But it's really an incredible opportunity for event planners and producers to capitalize on opportunities we might not have had in the past. So, we just were talking about redesigning your booth experience and what the look and feel of your booth looks like. AI is an amazing way to do that. It doesn't cost any money, and you can put an old booth into an AI app like Midjourney, like maybe a booth that you've had in storage that you used 5 years ago, right? You put it into Midjourney, you give Midjourney some prompts like, I want to update this booth for 2024 look and feel. I'm thinking my new brand colors are pink and blue, and I want it to include boho furniture, and I want to create an indoor-outdoor garden booth experience. And Midjourney can take the photo of your existing booth and start to conceptualize new ideas for you. So I think from starting from a trade show perspective, it is a great way to ideate different looks and feels of booth builds that you might already have or that you might be considering building, right? You could take photos of several different booths and say, I like this component from this booth and this component from this booth. What would it look like if I put those components together? So I think that's an incredible way. I think the other way AI is really changing the face of what we're doing is it's able to capture, like we talk a lot about behavioral mapping now. So we can put cameras on the show floor or in a booth to capture what people are experiencing in your booth. Doesn't capture their face, doesn't capture their data. You're not going to get any data from it other than data that says, hey, this section of your booth was really engaging. People stopped and we could tell that they were excited, right? It can capture their facial expressions and translate that into a moment, right? A moment of engagement or a moment of not so engaged. It can capture time they lingered in the aisles around your booth, right? Like, did people stop and look and think, what's going on in there? Or it can say, this part of your booth really didn't perform well. So I think looking at that, and especially from a trade show producer as well, if you have a larger trade show, understanding areas of your show floor in general that are drawing more traffic, it can allow you to then invest in ideate new ways to capture engagement on areas of the floor that aren't drawing a lot of traffic, right? Like understanding why that's not happening. So I think there's a lot to be said for where AI can take us. Integrated experiences within a booth, like putting AI into different engagement technologies and activations, like that's really exciting. We're starting to see that, right? You can walk up to a booth and it'll take your photo and AI can translate you and turn you into, I don't know, some kind of avatar superhero, right? So we're seeing a lot of that, and I think it's only going to continue. I think the biggest and most important thing is to be willing.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I'm talking to you right now, Samantha. You could be an avatar right now based on the Freeman technology. So I'm just saying,
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely.
I love those.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
love those mojo moments that you just created based on number two, specifically. Come with a vision. So use your AI tools. Midjourney is a fantastic, tool from a visual standpoint. But come with a vision to someone like Samantha, and so she's not having to, poke and prod and make sure that she's fulfilling your vision. You have the opportunity now to come with your own vision and have a fantastic company like Freeman execute that, right? Great integration, as well as the AI utilization for activations, right? And potentially even in the same vein of when AI is interacting at your booth, we're grabbing the information as well, so we have the opportunity to follow up. So 2 or 3 really good mojo moments on that. Nice work on that, Samantha. the number one, so I'm ready for this value bomb that you're about to lay on us, because here's the number one future facing opportunity that clients should take advantage of right now to create influence, and an experience on that trade show floor. Samantha, give it to me.
All right, Chris. Well, listen, I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you, but exhibits are actually ranked as the most important element for on-site events, even over networking and education sessions. But the trick is people want a hands-on experience, right? They want to be integrated into your booth experience. So whatever you are doing in your booth, you have got to find a way to customize it, to personalize it, to create a hands-on opportunity for your attendees. Shockingly, a lot of booths still are not doing this, right? They might have a beautiful booth. They have a gorgeous AV. They have experts in their booth that can talk to them, but there's nothing to do in their booth, right? There's no opportunity to play with the technology, to see it in action yourself. There's no opportunity to get their hands on a sample of whatever you're selling. And I get it. Some people might say, well, we're not selling anything, right? Or I don't have a product, like a physical product to give away, but you're not thinking outside the box in that way, right? Like just because you might not have a physical product to give away doesn't mean you can't find a creative way to get hands-on with whatever you're doing. So let's just say, for example, you're selling a new wellness app, right? Well, create a wellness experience in your booth that's hands-on, get people excited about your brand. And I think that's where, the opportunity to bring people onto your team that are real creatives, that can find ways to create a story with how people interact with your product or with your idea or with, your technology is really valuable to your exhibit team. Because if people cannot do something in your booth, if they can't touch it and feel it and get hands-on, if there's not an opportunity to have something customized to them, then they're going to be in there for a very short period of time. And that's another thing you can use AI for. You can see that data when you start doing behavioral mapping, right? Booths that have that hands-on experience, people linger in their booth significantly longer than booths that have a gorgeous booth and a gorgeous experience, but no hands-on interaction.
I was going to ask you that question, Samantha, because, and great number one, right? Hands-on experience is more than the four walls. It's the experience you're having with the people that are actually selling your product, using technology as well, but the experience of touching and feeling, hearing, seeing, everything. I love it. But when a client comes to you and the trade show, the exhibit is done, okay? Very important question. How do they know, and maybe it's just merely or purely financial, but how do they know that the engagement that they created on that exhibit floor was worth all the money that was invested? First of all, you hear it all the time, how are they wanting that measurement? And then how do you deliver that measurement in terms of, yes, it was successful based on this, this, and this?
That's a really great question, Chris. So I'll tell you, for the booths that I produce for Freeman, not necessarily client facing, but our Freeman activations, we go into the trade show, and this is a really important distinguishing point, right? Is you can't just show up on a trade show floor and create a great experience and be like, oh, it was successful. You have to go into the experience knowing exactly what you want to get out of it, right? Is your goal brand identity? Is it to bolster brand loyalty? Is it to capture new business? Is it to extend relationships of existing business? Is it to just provide an opportunity to create new brand awareness for new customers? So I think the most important thing is to understand what your goals are before you show up on that show floor, and how you're going to measure them, right, Chris? Because if you just say, well, I want to create brand loyalty, what does that mean to you? Is that new social media followers? Is it word of mouth? What does that mean to you? And I think that's really important, because that is going to be different for every booth that's on a show floor, right? Like what my return on investment and experience means to me and how my company values that, that's going to could be very different from the booth sitting right next door to mine, right? So I think the first things first are you have to understand what those are. And I think it's important to understand what those are as you're in the build process of your booth too, right? Because if your process is to capture new business, your booth might need to look a little bit different than if your booth is purely designed for brand loyalty, right? So I think understanding that from the get-go is really vital. And then once you know what your goals are and you know what your measurement is, it's just utilizing the technology and the data that exists, not only from the show organizer, but from what you can bring in to figure out how you capture that, right? So if one of your goals, right, is to capture new business, you need to know how many people your team is talking to in and around your booth. We all know lead retrieval is a thing. I will say that the problem with lead retrieval is you're also relying on everyone in your booth to scan everyone that they talk to, and they just don't do it. Like, it's just not a reality. So you need another way to capture those people. And that's where you can rely on AI, right? Or other technology to capture the people that you aren't getting through lead retrieval. We have some of our booths, what makes a difference to them, right, is how much revenue they generate after a show is over. So for those people, it's really important to have a back-end process that distinguishes like how you track that revenue post-show. And that looks different for every company too, right? So like back at GameStop in my GameStop days, one of the things that was really important to us is our show happened right before Q4, right before the holiday season. And so for our exhibitors where we sold space on the show floor, a lot of the ROI was how well is your game going to sell when it launches in November, right before the holiday season. And if you show up at our show, it's going to sell exponentially better. But in order to prove that, we had to have a back-end sales process in place that tracked the difference between brands that had their booth on our show floor, the size of that brand, how well it did once it went to market, versus brands who chose not to exhibit at our show of a similar size and how theirs did once it went to market. So I think just understanding what you want to do. I mean, the most important thing is, like we talked about at the beginning, we want to tell stories, but we want to tell stories that not only matter to attendees, but it matter to us. To tell a story, you have to know where you want the story to go at the end, right? And so you have to think about that from the beginning.
So I have an announcement to make that I just offered Samantha a job for Imprint Group, and she accepted. So sorry, Freeman, because I'm taking the superstar with me. No, seriously, Samantha, these mojo moments that you created for living in that trade show, the exhibit hall, and I love that you said it probably is the most important part of many of these live events, is because that's your opportunity to engage your customers. So that's huge. And remember that. And there's amazing resources. And one of the greatest resources that I just discovered is this young lady right here, Samantha Vogel, being part of our Top 3 Thursday value bomb that she just laid down on for us for the trade show world. And we're going to be doing blogs on this as well. But Samantha, I could not be more appreciative and grateful that you took time out of your very busy schedule to give me the ultimate elevator pitch of why trade shows and exhibit, the strategy and the stories behind that are so important. So grateful beyond words. So thank you so much. That's Samantha Vogel at Top 3 Thursday. I'm Chris. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day.
That's all for this episode of Top 3 Thursday. Remember, staying informed is the key to staying on top of things. You can find links to any resources mentioned in the show notes. And be sure to join us next time for more insights and stories that keep you connected to the pulse of change.